Rejection Proof by Jia Jiang begins with a simple but painful truth. Most of our lives are quietly shaped by the fear of hearing no. Jia Jiang opens the book by recounting a pivotal moment when a promising startup deal collapsed with a single rejection. What hurt most wasn't the loss itself, but how deeply it shook his sense of worth and courage. He realized that rejection had far more power over his decisions than he ever admitted, and that power was limiting his life. Instead of retreating inward, he made an unusual decision. He would deliberately seek rejection every day for 100 days. Not success, not approval, but rejection itself. The goal was not to win people over, but to strip rejection of its emotional sting. This framing is crucial. The book is not about becoming fearless, but about becoming resilient enough that fear no longer controls behavior. Early in the experiment, Jiang experiences intense discomfort. Simple acts like asking strangers for unreasonable favors trigger racing thoughts, shame, and the urge to escape. He describes how rejection feels physical, like a tightening in the chest or a sudden drop in the stomach. By narrating these sensations, the book helps the reader recognize their own embodied fear responses rather than intellectualizing them away. One of the first turning points comes when Jiang realizes that most rejections are not personal judgments. People reject requests, not human beings. When someone says no, they are responding to context, mood, incentives, or misunderstanding, not issuing a verdict on your value. This insight doesn't remove the pain instantly, but it loosens the belief that rejection equals unworthiness. As the days progress, Jiang notices that anticipation is often worse than the rejection itself. The mental rehearsal before asking is filled with catastrophic fantasies, yet the actual no is usually brief, neutral, and survivable. This teaches a powerful lesson: fear thrives in imagination, but weakens in reality. Action collapses exaggerated fear into manageable experience. Midway through the book, Jiang introduces the idea of reframing rejection as data. Every rejection contains information. Why was it a no? Was the ask unclear, poorly timed, or misaligned with the other person's needs? By shifting from emotional interpretation to curious analysis, rejection becomes feedback instead of failure. This is one of the book's most actionable mindset shifts. A particularly memorable story involves Jiang asking a Krispy Kreme employee to make donuts shaped like Olympic rings. Instead of a flat no, the employee asks questions and eventually fulfills the request. Jiang learns that many rejections are negotiable if you respond with calm curiosity rather than withdrawal. Asking why respectfully often opens doors that fear would have kept closed. The book also addresses a subtle trap: avoiding rejection often disguises itself as being realistic or polite. Jiang exposes how people lower their goals, soften their desires, or never ask at all to protect themselves emotionally. Over time, this avoidance shrinks life. Rejection Proof argues that the cost of avoidance is far greater than the cost of rejection. As Jiang accumulates more rejections, something unexpected happens. His confidence grows, not because he is winning more, but because his self-worth is no longer on the line. He begins to separate outcomes from identity. Whether the answer is yes or no, he remains intact. This emotional decoupling is the core transformation the book aims to offer. The later chapters emphasize that rejection tolerance is a skill, not a personality trait. Like muscle, it strengthens through repeated exposure. Jiang encourages readers to start small and deliberately design low-stakes rejections. The point is consistency, not heroics. Courage is built through repetition, not sudden breakthroughs. Another important insight is that rejection often earns respect. People respond positively to clarity, honesty, and boldness, even when they say no. Jiang finds that asking directly often creates better interactions than avoiding discomfort. In many cases, rejection leads to conversation, connection, or unexpected kindness. Toward the end, Jiang reflects on how fear of rejection distorts decision-making long before any interaction happens. It filters which dreams feel reasonable, which conversations feel appropriate, and which ambitions feel allowed. By confronting rejection directly, those invisible constraints begin to dissolve. The book does not promise a life free of pain. Jiang is clear that rejection will always sting to some degree. The goal is not numbness, but freedom. Freedom to act according to values rather than fear. Freedom to pursue opportunities without requiring emotional safety guarantees. In its closing chapters, Rejection Proof reframes rejection as a universal human experience rather than a personal flaw. Everyone who dares to ask, create, or lead will be rejected repeatedly. The difference between stagnation and growth is not how often rejection happens, but how one responds to it. By the final page, the reader is left with a grounded, practical takeaway: rejection is not the enemy. Avoidance is. When you stop treating rejection as a verdict on who you are, it loses its power to define what you do. The book ends not with bravado, but with quiet confidence, the confidence of someone who knows they can survive no, and therefore is finally free to ask for yes.